Some time ago I played and reviewed Coral Sea, which is a game published by Bellica 3rd Generation, a Spanish publisher, and it is the second game in their Campaign Commander series. Now, I really like this game. I find the system very innovative, very interesting, and so I wanted to play it more, and I decided to move backward and to try the first game in the Campaign Commander series, which is Road to Stalingrad, clearly a World War II Eastern Front game, and, well, long review, short introduction. Let's see what the game is about. This is a general overview of the map. You can see Stalingrad up there, and here you have the area with the initial setup with the Axis units that are trying to push their way through towards Stalingrad, and of course the Russians that are trying to stop them. The victory conditions are based on victory points, which you gain by taking or retaining control of these cities that have a numerical value, which is the number of victory points that they're worth, or by destroying enemy units. So you have different strategies. You can go for the territory, or you can go for the kill, or a mix of the two. Component-wise, the map does not look too good. It looks a little bland, a little washed out. The rulebook tells you not to worry about roads and railroads that are there only for decoration. Well, we really don't have to worry about them because there aren't any. It looks like they almost printed a playtester map. There are no names for the rivers, which is a little weird because the Volga has different movement rules from the other rivers. But again, I guess you can Google or Earth it if you don't know where the Volga is, and you can tell which one it is. A staple in the Campaign Commander system is that the turns don't have a standard sequence of event. At the beginning of the turn, each player will use one of these cheats that have a map printed on one side and some cards printed on the other one. They will choose one of the two sides secretly, and then they will reveal it at the same time. Suppose that they both chose cards, then both players can use one of the cards from their deck, and cards have the different types of cards, they have different effects, and they can use the card option to play a card for effect, or to draw a new card, or to exchange a card, basically to discard it, to obtain a resource point, which I'll explain later what that is for. If one of the two players chose the map and the other player chose the cards, then the player with the map will conduct an onboard operation, which just means you spend a resource, you activate some units to attack, to move, to reorganize, you do stuff on the map, and then the other player will use a card. What is really interesting is if both players have chosen the map, in that case they have to roll a die, and the initiative player has a bonus of +2 and wins dice, and the player with the highest number will conduct the operation on board, but the other player will do nothing, will simply skip that turn. There can be only one operation on board each turn. So if you're not the initiative player, that is particularly tricky, because if you think that your opponent is going to conduct an operation, then it's a risk that you're taking of trying to get the initiative for that turn, but you might just end up not doing anything. In that case, it might be safer if you just decide to play cards. In this game, the German player has initiative at the beginning of the game, and later, by playing a specific card, the Russian player might annul that, and then no player will have initiative for the rest of the game. To conduct an operation on board, you spend a resource, and that will give you 6 supply points that you can spend on units up to 3 spaces free of enemies from the space where you spent the resource. So it's very important because you need to have resources in the areas where you are going to activate your units. In that case, I have spent a resource there, so I could spend supply points on this unit, on this one, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All of these units could be supplied by that expenditure of resources. So the interesting thing is really you need to have resources where you are conducting an operation, and that emphasizes the logistical aspect greatly. Once the resources are on the board, they cannot be moved, but there are special rules about the way you can place them on the board. The German player, if he meets certain conditions, can take control of the railroads, which is just an abstract rules that help helps with placing resources. However, before that happens, and for the Russian player for the entire game, the resources can be placed in a friendly city which is connected to a source of supply through a line of supply. And lines of supplies are trays connecting controlled cities, friendly cities, that are no more than 3 spaces away from one another. And for the German player, it's a matter of connecting them to this city here, or this other city here with this very long name. So for example, in this case, suppose there are no resources there, then 1, 2, and then 1, 2. Or in this case, even like 1, 2, 3. That is supply. The German player can place a resource there. For the Russian, is a matter of connecting cities to get a connection to those supply symbols there. So it is pretty interesting because it is a system that, opposed, for example, to Coral Sea, is much more forgiving. In Coral Sea, the resources enter the board from the edges, and then you have to use naval units to bring them where you needed them. And that meant that if you made a mistake, you miscalculated, you might end up with naval units in the middle of nowhere, land units stranded on a small island, and you need to spend points and resources to bring resources there. Here, suppose that you miscalculate, you are without resources in a certain area. As long as your net is still there, then you can just place them back and you'll be able to act in that area. However, it is more, again, it's more forgiving, but it doesn't mean that it is dull or boring, because you can still do a lot of things with those supply lines. The Russian player can try to prevent the German from having control of the railroads, and you can always try to cut the enemy supply lines, which of course means you are often entering behind enemy lines, so putting yourself at danger of having your own units cut off supplies. So a lot of things that can happen, and that means that this is really a good game to learn the resource system of this series of games, and at the same time it does not feel, you know, simplistic or dull like a simple introductory game. In this game, battles start the moment that your units enter an area where there are enemy units. And the first thing that you do is you look for your unit with the highest tactical value, which is this number here on the right. So in this case, the Russian has a value of 2 and the German a value of 4. At that point, you will draw battle chits from your pool. Each player has a different pool of battle chits equal to the number of the highest tactical value. In this case, the Russian player draws 2 battle chits, suppose it draws these ones, and the German player draws 4. As you can see, those battle chits have different illustrations because they do different things. You have the Russian human wave and the ambush and combined arms, panzer attacks, assault, flank attack, and then the players will play 1 cheat each. So for example, the German player decides to play this one, and then the Russian player plays this one, then you have this one, and then these other ones, and another one, then the Russian player will have to draw more cheats. It is a system of I go, you go, I go, you go, but there's a lot of different options. There are a lot of different things that can happen. So that makes the flow of the combat very interesting, because the cheats will force the opponent to roll a die that might result in having a unit disorganized or depleted, but they do that in different ways. Different battle cheats will have different modifiers. Different battle cheats represent particularly violent attacks that actually might also result in having the attacker taking some damage. So I like the tension that comes from this, because you're choosing your chits and playing them one by one, and you do not know exactly what type of attack your enemy is going to launch next. Also, if you manage to bring in a unit with a good tactical value, then you have a good pool of battle chits that you can choose from during the battle, and then according to the order that you create, you can have some interesting combos that you can come up with. So there's a lot of fun there. In conclusion, what happened to me playing Road to Stalingrad is exactly what you hope will happen when you're playing games in a series, meaning that the game is similar enough to its brothers, in this case Coral Sea, so you don't have to learn a new game from scratch. At the same time, the game is different enough, it has enough personality that you don't feel you're just playing a re-thematization, does that word even exist, of the previous game. The game, just like Coral Sea, it's fun, it emphasizes logistics, it emphasizes good strategy, it is tense, there is a lot going on, it is just a good game which I find rewarding per se. Also, it is just part of a system which is new and I find very innovative, very unique. It is in a certain way a game that works well as an introduction to the system, but as I said several times in this review, it is not an introductory game per se. The experienced gamer can find a lot of things to sink his teeth in with this game. I recommend it. I just hope that you give it a try, and in general I hope that this game, the series in general, and Bellic After Generation get more recognition abroad outside of Europe, because I honestly think they deserve it.